right, folks. Let's get some people in here, see if you guys can hear me. I'll let and see. This hotel looks like it has a pretty good network connection, so we'll see if you guys can actually give me a thumbs up once you guys are in. We'll let a few people get in too. I want to make sure that people can catch the first part of the conversation. We'll see if folks can go out and reshare and get some of this out there. I don't do too many of these. Usually I'm focused more on the technical and mining side, but a lot of people have asked for these kind of videos, and I want to give them to you. Just give me a thumbs up if you guys see and hear. I'm running a lot higher bit rate here because the upload on this actual hotel I'm in is actually fiber, and I was getting some crazy speeds. So I'm running about 5 megabit up right now on this the video upload. The lighting in here kind of sucks though, so I'm sorry for that. Excellent. I'm getting a thumbs up that the sound and the audio. You might hear a little fan that is on my laptop. It's the Alienware laptop, and it has an external graphics, or a high-end graphics card in it, and anytime you put any kind of load on it, it spins up the fan. So excellent. So it looks like we got about 20 in here. I'll start here in 1 minute. Sounds like he's mining in the hotel room. I'm not. It's actually just running on the laptop. I don't mine in the hotel room. There's probably a rule against that with using their power for unknown stuff. The audio is probably a little off because I'll try to scoot a little closer. But we'll go ahead and get started. I mean, there's about 26 of you. I figure a few more people would actually come in here soon, but we'll, I want to kind of, if you guys hear a jet engine, I think the air just turned on in here too, but we'll go with it, with what I have tonight to kind of cover, and then people can catch the recast of this if they want to catch up. But I've seen a lot of stuff. I mean, I didn't have a lot of time to focus the last few days on the space, and I say the space like crypto space in general, but catching some of the news that's out there, and a lot of people are kind of freaking out, with price, and the cryptos and the entire space is down right now. And what I would say to that is a lot of the fluctuation. You got to look at the crypto space in general with the amount of actual amount of funds that are in the space versus some of the larger wallets, that people that have it, and a lot of people that have a lot of staked interest in it can really manipulate that market. So you got functions like, think of it like a category. The category of media has a very big impact on price, with regards to respect to other markets, say like a stock exchange or something like that. So all media, the China news with what's going on there, which a lot of it's just, a lot of people use the word FUD, but it's just a lot of unconfirmed content, right? A lot of speculation, 3 parts removed from people that go and communicate. Then you got Jamie Dimon from JP Chase that has a right to an opinion like anybody else, and his opinion rests on the fact that he thinks that Bitcoin is whatever. But it's kind of irrelevant. His kind of analysis, quite frankly, is irrelevant. And what I say by that is that, one, you can have a position of some kind of discussion at the table if you have a staked interest in it, or you've actually partook in it, and you have some history to show to say, you know what, I've tried this, and here's why I think it's crap, or whatever. If you're just shooting from the hip, no matter how powerful you are, if you're the most powerful person in the world sitting in a seat to running a bank, if you're saying it from a position without having genuine functional knowledge of how it works, that's a little risky. It's a little risky for his business for sure, especially if people put trust in that business, and then what he's saying is absolutely doing the counter, right? oh, it's crap, it's crap. He's been talking about that for years, and it's like up a lot, right? So just from the mechanics of that, I mean, it just doesn't, the average person is going to start really questioning his judgment, right? So that's a real dangerous position for him to be coming from that. Now, like if Bitcoin dropped like down to like $900, you know, from like $4,800, I mean, there'd be a lot of panic because people are like, oh crap, maybe he's right? But I mean, we're talking like a little, like it was actually on the incline. He talked what he did. It went down a little decline. Again, that media category in general, Twitter, the propagation of just general internet from people talking, again, the crypto space in general is like hyper accelerated, not fake news, but it's you got a lot of educated, a lot of people that have access to internet with various education that may not know education in the finance space, but can actually access crypto, have bought crypto, and are really looking at those news sources for some information if they don't know how to get to it technically. So there's a lot of sway, and it can happen very quickly, as we see. So this space in general reacts very quickly to news on the internet. So until it gets some genuine large critical mass to it, there's going to be some swings in it. I mean, that's just the mechanics of how things work. I mean, we got a $150 billion market cap in that space, and I look at it like you're trying to carry a tank full of water, like for a fish tank, and right now, you can, with all the capital in the world, you can sit there and swing that water around. When it gets to the level of like a lake or an ocean, little people jumping in the water isn't going to make too big of a wake. Let's just say that. So right now, you got to look at it like volume of water, and that there can be some big splashes based on some certain communications. So what I would rest in that. So that's what I would put categorically by the ability for people to insinuate or say things that will have a net effect because of just the way the internet works and the way communication works. And then there's another layer that's on top of that. It has to do with people that just can manipulate the market. You know, sell short, hopefully buy at the dip, and then get the rise, right? So that there's going to be some of that behavior going on too with it that you got to couple in. The way I kind of ground all of that communication though, and as people that mine and all that, you know, you got to look at the fundamental bottom line, the fundamental concept that Bitcoin's been around for quite a while now, right? I mean, we're talking from 2009. If you strip away all the technology, you strip away everything about it, all the history, all the stuff, and just look at it mechanically, it works. We know it works. When you want to send a transaction from A to B, it functions. That network works. It's always worked. It continues to work no matter what anybody else says. That's why you'll see Andre and a few of the other folks that are big key players with regards to communicating Bitcoin's technology in the space have absolute confidence. It isn't from a confidence from a level of that they're just speculators and that they understand what the technology means, what it is, and that it functions. This is not a question. Like in testing and when we're developing software, you test and verify, right? The Bitcoin has been a test case that's been verifying for years now. So short of what anybody wants to say about it, the technology from being able to transact from a debit and a credit, it functions, it works, and there's utility in that. And utility drives value, period. End of the story, right? So when you look at people that could have the worst impact from that disruption, they're going to have a different position on it. And I know I'm saying these things that are very, I call it atypical if you think, okay, a banker's going to be mad about it. But if you look, there's a lot of banks looking at the technology in general, not just Bitcoin, but just the blockchain technology in general. I mean, the utility is out there. The people understand the utility. And then when you look at some of the proverbial, you know, I don't want to call them talking heads because that's kind of demeaning, but the people that have the media exposure will take positions that will defend their space. So I would look at something like Jamie's comments as purely a defension of space mixed with probably a continued ignorance or a pressing back of wanting to know more about it. I don't know Jamie Dimon or anybody like that. However, I've known people that I can see from just my viewpoint looking at them, and they would typically be people that are denying the inevitable, right? They're like, I don't hear about it, don't talk to me about it. You know, I mean, you can see that just from the natural reaction by what's in the media saying that, you know, if any of my people, even if I hear about my people at it, they're fired. You know, it's a natural reaction to not wanting to get more information on something that could be impending doom. So mechanically, we all know, anybody that's been part of this space understands the technology and knows that it can absolutely transcend that entire concept of banking. However, I would take a more, I don't want to call it an empirical approach, but just an approach to understand that large entities that right now facilitate those transactions and that kind of bank the bankable world, meaning like people that have bank accounts, people that have, you know, normal jobs that get paid, and, you know, middle class, lower class, whatever, anybody that has a bank account, that this now is, they're looking at it from an augmentation standpoint. They're trying to figure out how they can adapt without being completely and ultimately replaced through the disruption, but that's going to continue on probably for a long time. It's the same reason, like, we know that there's a better way than using fossil fuels for cars, but we still use fossil fuels cars. There's a lot of infrastructure. Why it's a good idea to move in that direction, to start replacing those entities. I think certain facets of the industry are a little further ahead of moving away from their core principles, something like a Western Union. I mean, I haven't looked at their books, but I can't imagine that they're getting just beat up to hell because there really is no reason to use that service anymore. I mean, it's been absolutely replaced. Like, if you work in a particular country and you want to send value to somebody else, there is no reason why you wouldn't use something like Bitcoin. That's just ridiculous if not, right? Just go to an exchange, get the conversion. Now the exchange piece is still a little pain right now to get into your local currencies, since everybody doesn't accept Bitcoin, but just being able to transfer value at that with that kind of symmetry and just it is just paramount, right? So that industry, transfer value, is effectively by and large replaced, and I think that's why you see a huge adoption. Additionally, I think one piece that I don't hear a lot coming from people, I mean, you hear some of the narrative when it comes to banking, giving individuals the ability to bank that have never been able to bank is a lot more powerful than you realize. And you realize of how many people actually have access to modern banking and the ability to use funds. Fundamentally, if you take people that were never part of that ecosystem and now give them the ability to make purchases. So if you have somebody in another country, I'm not even going to pick a country. I mean, you could pick Northern Africa, you could pick India, you could pick you could pick parts of the U.S., right? That people that just never trusted the banks, never want to be part of the banks, and now they have this thing that they can interact and now have purchasing power. Their purchasing power now augmented with the ability to purchase something that normally, mind you, there's people that literally live in this world, and some don't have access to it, and then some that do have access to banking but still choose not to use banking, that only interact with what I would call their local group, where they can drive and they can hand cash to. That's who they transact with. When you enable somebody that does not have to get part of the ecosystem from a banking side, and now you've given them the power on their smartphone, if they have a smartphone, or something that could have a Bitcoin wallet, to now purchase something remotely from somebody else, that gives them now purchasing power. If you amplify that by the amount of people that do not bank, and now you have this huge ecosystem of new value, of potential value, their hard-earned local money now turned into a universal currency that they can quickly transact, it changes everything. So there again is another use case of functionality, just from a transfer value standpoint, that solidifies the strength of something like Bitcoin. That JP Morgan and nobody out there is going to invent, right? That's already invented. It's there. It's functional. It's been functional. It's going to be continued, and they don't control it, right? Nobody controls that. So it just changes the concept of where the banking concept and mindset kind of can go with it. So there's still going to be people that are always indoctrinated as banks are where it's at. And that might be something that might be an 80-year transition, that maybe eventually that kind of thing goes away and banking goes more into helping people take a convenience of having wealth management in general. Maybe that's where that space goes to. Because not everybody, like, I can change the oil in my car, but I take it somewhere because there's people that do that, that want to do that, that or have a job to do that. Everybody doesn't, there's different specialties for folks that have, do different things that's what they choose to do. So, like, the banking industry could facilitate, a service function that isn't necessarily controlling our money, right? So that's where I'm going with that. So it's attrition, it's a change of purpose, and that's where those folks will eventually probably move to once this technology really starts to hit mass mainstream, where it is integrated in the next release of the next phones, and it's just part of the ecosystem of society, right? That is, I think, the proven use case that's been going on has pretty much proven that's a potential path that it could go to. So if you haven't bought your Bitcoin, I mean, like buy like 0.1 or something, because there's a pretty high chance that's going to go pretty expansive. But again, from just a technology standpoint, I'm trying to look at my notes to make sure I'm not skipping over anything that I wanted to try to project. The effects, now if I take that, what's been going on with the general space, again, mass media, news, driving value, price down, temporarily at best, that's going to drive all the sea, rises all boats, when the tide rises all boats, and at low tide it's going to bring everything else down too. So there is a transcendent effect. It is a correlated, very correlated, that you could plot out to show, the difference of Bitcoin coming down and bringing everything else down. Some stuff hits a little harder with it, and that's going to start to pull down all the other cryptocurrencies. And some people are just all about Bitcoin, and that's great. I like the fact that there is an entire ecosystem of not other options, because I don't look at the other cryptocurrencies as like stores of value like I would Bitcoin. I look at them as potential forms and functions that are incentive. Well, hopefully some of them are incentivized to better the ecosystem of the technology, blockchain in general, be it that through smart contract and fixing known errors in smart contracts like such as Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum, based on basic concept, based on a consumption model versus a store of value model, to where you actually create the inception of the coin, and then that will be used in the execution of an event. There's a lot of traceability to modern workflow middleware technologies in business that could use that kind of ecosystem. And it really ultimately, if it laid out well and had the right storage principles, or the actual storage options, if that's like an extension through a side chain to like storage coin or all that, to where people could then contribute space, from you both have the compute, the space, and the business logic layers in smart contracts. That ecosystem from a consumption side would then provide a mechanism for value for that particular set of currency. It's got to start somewhere. I see a lot of people that put a lot of hate on a lot of the cryptocurrencies, the other alt currencies, but through all the FUD of bad ICOs and bad intentioned technology, people going after just the quick buck and all that, the development teams that are genuinely trying to move the proverbial needle by trying to figure out some of these issues. I mean, I have a whole little booklet here of just vulnerabilities just with like Ethereum smart contracts, right? They're pretty out there, known, potential pitfalls when you're writing smart contracts that are out there. I mean, there's 6 or 7 for Solidity alone, 3 or 4 for the EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine, and 3 that are in blockchain that are just no known variables, are no known vulnerabilities that can affect if somebody's writing a smart contract. But this is the kind of stuff that's fine. That's it's not going to be perfect right away, and that's part of like that whole concept of like an agile development where you're gonna fail lots of times and you're gonna get better at it. Unfortunately, the failure has a lot of value tied to it when it comes to if that failure impacts people at a mass, like if from a wallet standpoint, it's a different. It has a different level of failure and not to fail incentive in programming compared to normal like languages. Like when a team spends a lot of time writing something in code, a lot of failure will sometimes slip a schedule, which the impact is felt from the budget, right? I got to keep developers on for another 6 months to try to fix this thing, but it's a lot smaller. This is a situation where like code issues like with Ethereum or any of the other smart contract apps, has this weird ambient effect to all the stakeholders, which are people that hold Ethereum. But while there is a short-term loss, I look at it as a short-term loss on some of that stuff and a long-term gain. That if they make the breakthroughs and they fix the main bugs, and produce a platform that enables a technology to sit upon it, and then creates the extension of what real blockchain technology can bring to the world in general, it's beyond absolutely worth it. There's so many facets that it can impact on such a good way, from the smart contract level. So you guys have probably all heard the basics, healthcare and finance and transportation and all the different areas. But let's peel one of them back. And let me look at some comments before we go into this, and I'll go through a pretty detailed use case for just one facet, and we'll kind of play the game of like what could something like Ethereum or a derivative of Ethereum, be it somebody writing a decentralized application, a dApp on, let's say, like Ubik or any of the other platforms, could have an effect on. Let me look at some questions. My biggest fears is giving control of monetary policy. Governments giving up control of monetary policy. It is important for them to fund the government. Yeah, so there's still a lot of control and regulation that can be that can happen if you have to interact with the local currency. So like in the U.S., you're going to interact with everything's paid for in USD. Very few things can be paid for in BTC. So at the point of exchange is where they could regulate it and where you're going to pay taxes at. That knife cuts both ways. So a lot of people are probably wondering why hasn't the IRS, really put the hammer down on people, and why isn't there a lot of structure in there just yet? So obviously, I have no doubt that they're working hard on it, but that's a knife that cuts both ways. So if you start linking out, and what I mean by that, I'm going to explain that. If you start really linking people's accounts, tracing history, and then them having their own payment through blockchain or any kind of connection to a blockchain where they start posting records to it, from being a public government, something that we the people pay taxes, at least in the U.S. This use case is really central in the U.S. It could change the way taxes work, the way the government gets its funding, to where the government could ultimately be itself held accountable on how much if we're paying taxes, and we get to see what that money's going towards, because there is the Government Accountability Office. There is, like, we're supposed to be able to see what they spend their money on, sort of some of the protective contract stuff, but the majority of the budgets are they're out there. People can data mine it and look at what they spend on stuff, and that's where you see a lot of the, I mean, it's just a lot of data, and a lot of people don't go through it. You'll see that during like primaries and stuff, where they'll start to go through like, hey, they spent this much money on this and this person approved it. But when you can start to see it both ways, like if we're having to pay taxes and it's going to be on a registration system that reads a blockchain, and then everything's done through blockchain, let's go 25 years in advance here, and everything is just now blockchain, there's no real concept of basic cash. That works now both ways, to where we can, that the GAO also will get into the government and be able to see where that money's spent and how it's spent, and then you'll have third parties that can parse that information because it is on a public chain. It gets super complicated for them too, so they're having to go through the regulatory piece themselves to figure out, okay, we're also going to be exposed with this. And it's not that they're necessarily doing anything bad. I think it's one of those things where it comes down into, it's such a critical mass of big stuff, and there's so many different buckets of money that is probably misappropriated and misspent for all kinds of reasons. Part of it could be probably fraud, part of it could be abuse of power, part of it could be just that they genuinely, it's just too big, and they don't have the right personnel to keep track of everything, and shit goes missing. It could be that they don't spend enough, and the stuff gets moved around, because like all budgets in companies and in government and in everywhere, if you don't use your budget, you lose it type of stuff, and that's just a bad cultural thing that's in companies in general and government. All of those factors start to play into something that you could quickly use big data to process, and then start showing the history and start showing all that. And it's kind of one of those things, like, people think they're ready for that, but there's a lot of things that have to get in place and then change, both in the government, both in policy, both in and monetary policy, all that stuff that has to kind of, but getting that narrative started, getting the rules and guidelines in place, help move that needle to get into a right place. Bottom line, everything around us, the government and what they spend and what they do, we all feel the native ambient effects on it, both good and bad. But the fact that we have police and military and protection and basic civil rights, and I mean, I know there's a lot of civil rights stuff going on right now, but the functions of society, the utility of society, a lot of that, by and large, right, wrong, or indifferent, are paid for through those mechanisms. So setting up effectively from a business mindset, it would be setting up a whole bunch of business rules that we all agree on from a, all agree on is subjective, but all that people can vote on, through something like a system through this blockchain, and then that appropriates the way the funds are. And then all we have to do is argue ourselves, how sweet would that be from a government perspective if the people were at the blame, because it would all be voted and the system would be all allocated and the budgets would all allocate based on the voting. That would really, I mean, from a government, and I'm not government, but if I put a government hat on, that would seem like a real weight off my shoulders, because now everything's voted. But then it comes down to the very fundamental fact of people just don't agree with shit. So, which I would like to have the transparency across all levels, because if you can come into a transparency level to where we're transparently paying taxes, that we understand where they're being paid for or what they're being used for, and we can trace that all the way down to the gnat's ass, but they can also see what we make, and we come into an agreement through society of what makes sense, what's fair, for the services that are rendered. I mean, that's like a utopian kind of weird kind of thought of it, but in this blockchain tech, over a long period of time, through enough development and adjudication and trial and error proof, I think could get to something like that. That's the power of that. And I think that scares both government and, people, because a lot of people are going to want their privacy and want their rights on that kind of stuff. And it's, people are going to differ on that. if you have an entity that can read all of there's a lot of abuse that can happen with that, right? So it's as cultural as an issue as it is technical, right? But the utility from blockchain technology in general is just on next level, and that's why you see so many companies and so many entities partaking in that. But I was looking through your questions. I got into a tangent answering that. I'm going to look at a few more of your questions, and then I'll get into the use case that I was talking about, and we'll take a stroll through healthcare. And I'm not in the healthcare space, but as most of you know, my background in general is solution architecting, and this kind of space in general is kind of where my mind's at on stuff of just technology in general. But we'll go through. What's your 30 amp 220? I tell you what, we'll hit through a couple of use cases, and then I'll switch I'll kind of switch to like mining for the mining folks that follow us, because this is very not mining related right now. And I actually have the 30 amp videos. I've been trying to put that together, but I can bring it up in this video and we can kind of go through that. What kind of bullshit rig only pulls 6,600 watts? Hey, Richard Hart, thanks for joining, brother. I want to debate, well, not debate. I think me and you would have a very good conversation around mining in general, because I think both of us, I've watched a lot of your stuff, so I totally get some of your perspective on it. But from a grassroots, let's go down this road real quick, and then I'll go into the use case. No, we'll go into the use case and then I'll come back to mining. So use case on blockchain in general. So we're not talking Bitcoin right now, we're talking blockchain technology. So we're talking potential use case in the near term future on a permissioned public chain. And what I mean by permissioned public chain is because you'd want to know why it's permissioned, because of the data that's on there. Potential. There's still some code that needs to be written. Let's just say that before this would happen. But healthcare in general, public chain healthcare, let's say 2 years from now, instead of getting your insurance card as a normal, just whatever insurance you have, you get something like a common access card. And people that don't understand what a common access card is, what a typical contractor, anybody that needs to have any kind of secure PKI has essentially a private public key card that has a little chip on it. It kind of looks like the chip on any of your credit cards, that when you would go to a hospital, you would actually get insurance cards that were common access cards, essentially. So when your insurance sends you out a common access card, that is your ability to publicly say that that's you and write a signature, essentially. Think of kind of like a ledger, like plug it in. The ability to update your medical record. So if you have to go to a medical facility, and let's say a hospital or ER or something like that, you would be able to go into the ER. None of the interview questions that usually happen when you're like needing service and you're just like, here. They hand that multi-sig connection between the hospital and your agreement with that common access card that could have a basic biometric reading on it, to where you would just use your thumbprint with that to help validate the fact that your common access card is plugged in. And then all that's going on, the only records that are being written actually out to that public chain through the privatized, where you need your common access card to be able to interact with it, is your medical history update. With that, having a connection to the side chain that connects to your insurance. So no more bullshit. No more going through a whole bunch of medical crap. Everything's all linked on the blockchain with your individual ID. You hand your common access card to them. They make sure that any of the updates are on there. And even if they mess it up and they need to append to it, they can always reappend to it. You may have to come back in to do that, but you're able to make sure that you have that history. And then let's say you're a college student and you go to a different state because you're going to colleges. Now it's not calling your parents, figuring out what your medical history is. It's all on that chain. So all of the different events that happen, and which right now would happen in a centralized server within a hospital that may or may not share certain records to other entities, now have all that information available on a blockchain. The simplification from an administration standpoint, the simplification from a submission and adjudication of records to your insurance, all of that stuff being more symmetry. That could technically work with insurance in the long run, with like the folks that are down in Florida and Houston that had a lot of flooding with their insurance, and there's probably just unbelievable amounts of paperwork and drama that are going on with that. Having all those records on something that is like a blockchain that has some level of reference to those records. Now, a few things are going to have to happen, not just the blockchain writing of the immutable events and the security of private and public chain, being able to interact with it, but also some level of storage, because you're not going to store all that stuff in the main chain. You're going to have a side chain or something that allows some kind of storage. Otherwise, you're going to bloat the hell out of that blockchain. So there are some technical limitations right now in the technology, but through alt development, and I don't even want to say ICO, because ICO is kind of like a four-letter word right now with just the amount of ICOs that are out there. But if there should be a whole rules and terms of service of being able to do an ICO, to like, here's my development team, here's our roadmap, we're super transparent, here's our money flow. You essentially should be giving up your rights to that and let the community see everything that you're doing. And, open scrum sessions, all that kind of stuff, and show that progressive, here's what we're doing from I get it from an IP standpoint, but you're not showing them the code, you're just showing them some basic idea. And if somebody wants to challenge you to markets, it's good for the entire industry. There's enough space in this space to replace things. The innovation and through alts, through currencies, not just Bitcoin, I think is a horizontal, not just a vertical. So you're going to have a lot of people being able to do a lot of things, and if altcoins inspire them to do those good things, and then that can be then moved over to part of Bitcoin enhancements and everything else like that, I think it's a beneficial to the whole ecosystem and community. If I go into, I don't know if Richard's still here or not, but I will give him a use case of why I think mining is good. And I know that's going to be like Antichrist to him probably, but we'll see if he's in this room or not. But that's just a basic use case, guys. I could get into a lot. I don't have a whiteboard behind me, otherwise I'd start to kind of write it out technically of like how the basic components of that would work and what's kind of missing on the gap side, for not just the smart contract development, agnostic to the known security issues with smart contracts, but Richard's here. So I'm gonna give you a concept of why I think mining is good. And it is not from the traditional, hey, let's get rich and let's mine. On the contrary, I think mining does a few things, and this is what I've seen since mining. My first mining experience was late 2009, early 2010. We've been in this space for a very long time. I actually posted some pictures, I think from 2012, where we were actually showing people how to GPU mine. But mining, as the same reason why it got me engaged, was it was a grassroots event. When I used to work for a big Fortune 500 company, and one of the big principles on there was a grassroots campaign. Make sure people across all walks of life had access to just information and things to be part of it. And through that initial engagement, through mining, if somebody takes a basic PC, downloads a piece of software, starts mining, starts to learn more and more about things. They see their computer doing stuff, they don't really know what's going on. They start to ask more questions, they start doing more research, they see a lot more information. You start building the ecosystem through the mechanism of mining. Now, it's going to be a niche amount of people, but it's different. And what I mean by that is that it's going to engage that person pretty implicitly, because they're committing hardware, they're committing power, they're committing effort into that. And then usually that one-to-many connection that they have, family members, people that come over to their house and go like, dude, what are all these graphics cards? Like, what the hell's going on here? You're going to get that a different net effect than if you were having a genuine conversation with just somebody out there as a friend or anybody. And if you're just having an engaging conversations about Bitcoin and maybe you brought your Bitcoin wallet up or something, it's going to facilitate a different kind of conversation. It's going to facilitate like how are you generating value? What is proof of work doing? What is, what it's going to have a lot more engaging conversation. I see that just with what we've done. I see that from the people that we've helped build mining rigs, of what happens one to many with their walks of life and their people and cousins and brothers and people that interact with them directly. And some people are recluses. I mean, they're not going to talk like, dude, nobody knows I have a mining rig, right? You're going to have those folks too. But the grassroots thing, it gives people some version of crypto that they can go up to Bitcoin with. It gives people the ability to make a transaction, to understand the way the systems work, and sometimes through failure. I mean, there ain't nothing like losing something to really kind of spark your interest and not to have that happen again, right? So, and it's not as tough of a pill to swallow whenever you're mining and you get an incremental amount, and then if you screw that up versus if you went out and spent $1,000. I mean, a lot of people ask me this use case, like, oh, why wouldn't I just spend $2,000 on a piece of equipment? I'm like, you have a computer. As long as you have a graphics card that can download a miner, just start it. Get an incremental amount and understand the ecosystem. It's a low cost of entry, and it gives people a spatial awareness of how the tech works, because they spent a lot of time trying to earn that little bit, right? It's so weird, but it's the way it is. Like my computer worked for a fucking week and that's all I got. Like, this sucks, right? But then they think about it like, well, maybe I'll go buy some. But just that little bit of interaction and that little bit of transferring and moving it maybe to an exchange to sell it because now they're pissed that they just mined only that much. It doesn't necessarily put a sour taste of the technology, and now they have more information about it. And they may go back and say, you know what? Mining's not for me. However, I like the tech, and now it's kind of it's a discipled a person in the space to get the awareness out. And I think what we try to do is make sure that people know how to mine, and that do want to put the commitment out there to expand operations, that they're looking at more of the longer vision. They do have it from an economic standpoint, an economic incentive. Well, at least a lot of people did for at least through the summer. With the prices the way they are right now, it's really close to breaking even for a lot of people that have bad power issues or cost. But it still allows people to kind of hedge over the long term. People that kept mining Litecoin since 2013. I mean, we had some ASICs that kind of just sat there, but if they were turned on, we did some math on it and probably had about 1,800 more Litecoin. Which that kind of kicking ourselves now, because 1,800 times $3 at the time wasn't really worth keeping them on, but 1,800 times 70, that's, yeah. So, when you start doing the math like that, you start figuring out. And that's kind of the same use case right now with a lot of people that are mining Ubik or any of the other altcoins that they're Zcash, any of that kind of stuff that, if it does gets a use case, gets an update, then the software's getting updated. Ethereum's getting updated. I got a pamphlet of stuff of what's wrong with Ethereum. I got it. There's issues, and there's technically from a smart contract side that need to be fixed to really get huge adoption. But there is a foundation. It's on Microsoft Azure. People can spin that up, and developers are working. And that kind of investment will eventually lead to some kind of functional working software somewhere. Does that get deployed to public chain? That's the billion-dollar question, right? But partaking in it, I think, helps engagement. And you tell me if you want to have this debate. I think from a technical side, and maybe even philosophical, I can maybe kind of keep up with you. You're a smart dude, so. Die. Hey, you gotta rock that position, man. I respect that. That's fine. But I would love to have that conversation sometime. I think the community would like that too. And we don't have to just talk about altcoins in general. That's funny. I'll look at some of the comments. You guys can ask me some questions. I'm ready to go. Give me a link. We'll set it up. I'm out of town until Friday. Maybe we can set it up this weekend or something, man. I think we'll have a good debate. What do you think about Ubik? We've always went long on Ubik. I like the concept of a platform, a consumption platform that's for dApps, that's stable. That's whole mission and life is to be stable, unlike Ethereum's main network. I think is good. I think it all comes down to once somebody actually deploys a functional dApp that is solid enough to run some kind of application. Ubik is a strong candidate of being the platform that they would deploy it on versus Ethereum, just from stability purposes. All right, Richard. Yeah, we're probably going to get into mining here, man. And this might be like burning your ears. So if you drop off, I understand. Still messing with the Mitch asking, still messing with the Vega 64. We still have it. So this weekend I have the Vega 56 evidently arrived. So when I get back, we'll be going through this weekend the Vega 56, and we can pull up the 64 and do some updates to it. We'll do again. I mean, like I won't even open it until we get on the screen, guys. We'll go through it together and see what we can get out of it. Russell Lucas, what do you think about Awesome Miner? Don't know much about it. Is that like a multi-miner? How's the new 2400 watt PSU? Has it caught fire? No, it has not caught fire. It's rocking, man. It's still good. I am looking to get their larger 3 gain. So it's a triple power supply that actually has the 24 pin and then all this extra SATA connectors. It's supposed to be 3 times 1600. And I think it's like $150. So once we get that, we'll go through that too. Oh, Richard was mining in the right time too. I have a really good, you know what, do I have that video? Hold on, I might actually have that. No, I don't have it on this. Remind me on the next live stream. I did find a 2011 mining video with 5870s. You can beat me up on the quality a little because I think it's crappy as hell. I think it was like literally like the crappiest little camera that I had in 2011. But I actually tried to make like a BBT, before BBT video in 2011, mining Bitcoin on Slush's pool with like 2 5870s in a rig, and I actually have a power watt or a power meter running it and all that. And if you guys remind me on there, I'll show you guys that video. We'll just bring it up on here so you guys can see that. But I was going through some of the old videos from 2011 mining, and yeah, those were the days. Perry Little, you're correct. Windows 10 cannot do... We've had 13 GPUs show up in Windows, but we can't mine with 13. 13 of the same GPU. You can have 13 GPUs in Windows. You can have technically up to 16 GPUs in Windows, 8 and 8, and run 2 different miners on them. It's not super stable with 16, by the way. It's like buggy as hell. I'm looking at some of your guys' comments. I'll answer some more on mining specific stuff if you want. What cryptocurrency you mine? I live in Venezuela. It's whatever, which one you want to go long on. I mean, you could mine Ethereum, Ubik, Music Coin. I do not use Windows 7. If you don't update Windows 7, I mean, you have chances of viruses. It's just not good. Yeah, Windows gets real stupid if you try to get, like, technically I think we had 9 one time, and it would cause a general fault protection error and just crash the machine. Josh, the PSU, there's a link in the description to that 24. There's a link to the company of that 2400 watt PSU in the description. Vega or 1080 Ti? Russell, if you're going to do any other thing besides mining, I would go 1080 Ti. Then, and I'm going to confirm the Vega 64. We're going to go through the settings together, but the Vega 64s, like I saw, I think it was there was a blog site that had them showing like 135 watts or something at like 44 or 40 mega hash. So at 42 mega hash, I can do it at 205 with the Vega 64. So it's still that's better than a 1080 Ti. But if the price is the same as the 1080 Ti, I would go with the 1080 Ti, purely because it's a higher end card, and your resell and your gaming abilities are going to be higher on it. I mean, if we can actually get the Vega 64 down to like 130 watts for 44 mega hash, that's pretty decent. Vega 56 can get 40, 30 won't be $399. Yeah, so we're gonna find out. I paid almost $600 for the Vega 56. Right now, I'm just answering some of the questions in the chat, guys. We did. I do. If you guys go out and check our Twitter feed, I did have some. We're getting some shirts produced. I'm going to try to give away some shirts on the channel on the next thing. I have a graphics designer that's just done a lot of the graphics stuff for us, and he's had a little more time, so he's been updating some of the shirt designs and stuff, and I'd like to give some of those out. We have a couple cool designs out there, and we're also we got a Shopify site, and we're trying to make I'm trying to get a big bulk order of all kinds of different versions of the shirts that we've had produced, and trying to make them reasonable. I'm talking like $11, $12 at max for the shirts. So we're not there. We're not gonna make a ton of money on shirts, right? So I'd rather have just for the community awareness and get it as close to covering cost as possible, and then give you guys some pretty cool wares. And they're not like cheap ass shirts. They're like good quality shirts. Like, I don't like cheap shirts. Greg Hall, at the beginning of this, I go through it pretty implicitly. So you'll see the recast where I'm going to try to wrap it up at 1 hour, and then if we can get to we may be able to get to a live stream tomorrow night too, and I'll have a little different content on that. But again, it'd be hotel based, so we can get to some other stuff that I wasn't able to cover here. But how many NVIDIA cards will Windows 10 support? 8 of them. Question and thoughts on 1063 gig and best coins to mine. Seems Equal Cache is the best. Equal Hash, I mean, Zcash is good. Z Classic, both options there. 1080 Ti mining Ubik, it's about 37. When will colors be added to the multi-miner? So we do have some color we do have color in the multi-miner that's commented out. So I've been looking at different ways to add that doesn't look like total crap and doesn't confuse you if like Claymore's mining type of stuff. Because if you click Claymore, it has like green and red and green and purple and red, and if I have the multi-miner do that, it actually breaks like his thing. So and so we're gonna do we'll start to wrap it up here, 54 into this. I just wanted to do a quick one here tonight, guys, and that way you guys can come back and see the, you know, kind of what's up with the prices and stuff like that, and you guys can go back and review that tonight if you missed the first part of this video. But the detailed breakdown on some of the use cases, I think is actually a very valuable thing to make sure that people have an awareness of what, you know, the greater community in blockchain is working on. You know, I mean, it's not like protected IP or anything like that. Like, you see speculation of what people are, but just to show you guys hypothetically kind of where the technology can start taking us, I think is valuable for the community, especially from a solutioning side. I mean, like, well, you guys are not probably going to sit down and create a stack and then start doing some hardcore development on it. At least having an awareness of what to see and see some of the triggers, because those key triggers, once they start getting flicked, you're going to see pretty substantial growth in the space in general. If that's reflected in Bitcoin price from people awareness, mind you, price isn't necessarily indicative of how many people and how much engagement there is, right? So a lot of people attribute those two things together from a finance standpoint, but the amount of people and engagement that's in the space right now is pretty parallel right now compared to where it was like in March. However, the prices went up exponentially, right? Because people start to see that awareness of price, or start to see that awareness of function and utility. And utility and function will always drive not just interpreted value, but when people want to really invest into something that they believe in, when they start to understand it. And that's why those comments from like Jamie is hilarious to me. Is like there's no denying the utility and function. Like, it's like, does the sun come up every day? Yes. Yes, it does. Sometimes it's cloudy, but the sun comes up every day. So does Bitcoin transact between two parties? Sometimes it's slow, but it still functions. So that kind of stuff is like happening. So that utility is value. And when you don't need a third party to maintain and control that, at its most foundational level, that is like a no-brainer. That's like, I don't need to hear that from any analyst. I don't need to hear that from anybody that says that that's not valuable or not. That's valuable to me if I need to transact with somebody. I know when I go to Micro Center to use my credit card to buy a lot of equipment sometimes, if I go in there and go to try to spend, let's say $2,500, $5,000, and I give them that credit card, sometimes I have to call the bank. I have to like do 5 things, and I'm like wasting time. There's people in a line behind me, and I'm like, I am so sorry. I swear there's money in there. I gotta call these people because there's the fraud prevention stuff that's all in play. Or I could go up to them if they accepted Bitcoin and just transact with them, and immediately have that transaction, have that first confirmation, and see ya. That functionality, when played forward into modern society, simplifies so much overhead that's in play right now. And that overhead reduction is a value increase for companies' bottom lines, which should hopefully offset, you know, some expense to people. Now, most companies don't necessarily transcend that cost savings directly to the consumer. That's why valid competition matters. Because otherwise companies would have no incentive to recoup that back. I mean, it's just a mechanism of the system, right? I mean, like, do I give it back to them because I feel good? Or do I do what our primary mission is to drive stockholder value? Let me think about that. But if they have competition that says, you know what, I think I can get more sales if I give value back to people. How can I give value back to people without losing a lot of revenue? Streamline something in my supply chain or my workflow to reduce overhead, and now I have margin that I can take part of and then return part of on lower cost. That's how the system works, guys. It doesn't get any more complex than that. That's literally how it works. And competition really plays very well in that concept. That's why competition is so important, right? not to mention like that kind of schoolyard background type of stuff, like I'm going to be better than them, and there's that challenge that usually gets manifested in company ethoses, you know, to say to be better than whatever, you know, to drive value, to be the best, all that kind of stuff, right? Those are, I don't want to say hollow, I mean that gives people motivation, but well, maybe a motivation if they believe in their company, but that margin stuff is real, because it's a hard one for people to try to cut price and lose margin, and now go to the quarter and say, yeah, so we tried something and we were taking a negative margin compared to our last month, but we were hoping if you take margin, you need to sell volume to make up the difference. And there's a break-even price that's calculated. And the concept is to sell more volume to bust that break-even price and then come out ahead. That is basic finance at its lowest level, right? So there's only so many use case or you know, examples of that to show how things can work with it. So I'm just kind of rambling in finance, and you guys are probably like, dude, shut your pie hole. And so, any more questions, guys, and I'll wrap this one up. Hopefully this is value added. Are you mining in your bedroom? I am not mining right now. That is my laptop processing the video feed at 60 FPS. And it's just really putting a tax on the GPU, which it shouldn't be, because technically I should be running the thing. This Alienware laptop's loud. So if there's we'll wrap this one up, guys. I want to thank you for sticking in there. If you guys haven't tried, so this weekend I'm deploying, it's been like 4 months, but I'm going to finally deploy our Bits Be Trippin' website. We're going to do an update. So we already got bitsbetrippin.com. It's kind of an older like blog site. So we're updating that, and in that's going to have the Shopify site, which will have some of those shirts and stuff, and we're going to try to make things cheaper. And we will try to give you guys an option on some of the stuff that's out there that you guys have been asking for. So that should be this weekend. We're gonna do the Vega 56 this weekend. I'm gonna coordinate with Richard Hart and maybe we'll probably do a live stream on his channel, I'm assuming. So we'll figure it out. And we'll definitely show you guys that. That should be good, because there should be a debate on both sides. And I don't even know what to be a debate, because I agree with a lot of things that he says. So we'll see how it goes. Love your power set. I have. Let me. So I'm gonna give you guys one little thing that I got here. I don't know if I have. I have the ability to do this. Let's see here. Power. Oh, no. 25. Let me add a source. So we have a media file. I don't know if this is going to do the audio or not. It shouldn't. I don't know if that's actually playing the audio or not. Let me look at system sound, stream only. I don't know if you guys can see that. So this is kind of the power setup, and I don't know if it has the audio on it or not. And it's probably skipping like crazy, because that is like a full 4K video that's in RAW. But this is the power adapter that we use. It's essentially, it's skipping a little bit. High CPU detected. Yeah, my CPU is like maxed out right now. So these power banks, this is I'll do a proper video on this. Oh, is it even showing? Yeah, it should be showing. But this is when I say a 220 or a 240 connection, 30 amp, that's what this is. So this device that we use here, I have video, we've already recorded everything. I actually have all the audio done. It's just a matter of putting it together, but it really covers like these different banks that are essentially 12 amp banks with some 15 amp banks that, here's the video kind of switching over to, I don't know what it's doing to. Yeah, it's all locally surge protected, and it has a surge protector, or it has a 30 amp connection inside of your normal power box. And what it essentially does is gives you 4 banks of 12 amps. And then you have those bigger connections, which I don't use, which are 15 amp. And then what that'll pretty much allows you to do is, I mean, per 12 amp bank, you can have PCs, right? And with the lower amp, or the lower power usage, 1100 watts, something like that, you could technically put a couple rigs on that, those 2 of those power banks. So, I mean, I've pulled right at 12 amps on it, and it's fine. But if you go a little over that, it'll pop those switches. So that'll essentially gives you at least 4 to 6 rigs on one power bar. So that's what people are asking about. I'll do the more proper video on that. And it gives you the ability to just have a lot of rigs in one spot is what it comes down to. And then, you know, as long as you have 2 spots in your power box, you can get it installed pretty quickly. So we'll show the setup on that, and I'll do a proper video. It's like a 4-minute video. I think I've got it down to right now like 3.5. And I was debating. The only reason why I haven't submitted it out is I was actually going to add something else to it, because it's only like 3 minutes. Like, who wants to see a 3-minute video? So I'll see if I can pair it with something else, and then we'll get it out there. So we'll, if there's any more questions, did I have? I don't know if I missed any super chats. Let me see. Okay, I got 1 super chat. Hard debate, beautiful 4K needs to happen. Pause Saget, bitch, we tripping, and Richard Hart debate, and beautiful 4K needs to happen. Yeah, I think that would. Thanks, Bob Saget, for that $5 super chat. I agree. I think it'd be good. I mean, it could be kind of like more of an ask me anything. I mean, I think we agree on a lot of points. I think we disagree on some other points that are probably more centric around the mining piece stuff. So hopefully that would be a good one for the community. I think both of us being old actors in the space and never really have interacted. I haven't interacted with a lot of people, guys. That's one of the weird things with a channel that has almost 22,000 subscribers. Our channel is one of the oldest in the space, right, of actual cryptocurrency in general channels out there. And the fact that mechanically why I don't necessarily work on blockchain stuff, being in the space that I am, where I work on a lot of data stuff and a lot of development related content and stuff that I haven't crossed any paths, any direct paths. I mean, we went to a couple of the big Bitcoin conferences. I've talked at one of them officially, which was Hashers United. I went to Bitcoin North America. Met Charlie Lee, a couple other people, but I don't have a regular interaction or dialogue, both on Twitter or anything, with any of the other major actors in the space. And I don't know why. I guess there's just been no reason to interact with those folks. I think Richard's debate should be pretty fun. That'd be the first one I'm really doing with somebody that's educated well in that and has a lot of varied, solid opinions on certain functionality and things. So that should be interesting. Let's see here. This connection's been rock solid. I need this at home. This is sick. Fiber. So this is what fiber's like. Yeah, my current bit rate is at 5,300 kilobits per second. All right, guys. Well, check us out on bitsbetrippin.com. There's a Discord channel in there. I'll go into there after this. Answer some other questions. If you guys want to talk mining specifically, I'll be in the general chat in there. Again, bitsbetrippin.com. On there is a Discord link which gives you an invite into Discord. You can make a quick login when you're first there. Actually, you just claim a name essentially, and then you're in. And then you can interact with us there, and we'll answer some questions. Like, subscribe if you haven't, share. I mean, no way. We do no major marketing or anything, guys. This is all organic, which effectively means that you guys like the content that you've seen in some way, maybe a specific piece, and then you post it somewhere. Yeah. That's how essentially we go there. I don't want to go out there and spam a whole bunch of sites and stuff. I mean, I'm not... You guys being organic and just saying, hey, I agreed, I didn't agree, this guy's an asshole, whatever. You know, you guys having a debate out there, that's what's great about society in general. So put your comments below. I do value them. And we'll wrap this one up.